I was just reading an advanced copy of my good friend Lissa Rankin's book. It's called Sacred Medicine. It takes everything that she learned as a conventionally trained doctor who then got burnt out, had her own health issues because the system was not sustainable that she was working within. Went on this whole holistic healing, journey and investigation. And she puts everything into, a cohesive kind of study and research project.
I can't wait to read that.
Amazing. But she talked about how, she works closely with different indigenous cultures all over the world, and they're very connected to nature. Mm-hmm. And she said that, we've become the reason that so many people, these elders and shamans and people have told her, medicine people, indigenous cultures, that we have become young, their younger brother, modern man, has become so disconnected from nature, so disrespectful to nature.
Yes.
And this is why we're having imbalance in our body and sickness.
Yes.
And so just the simple act of going back to realizing that all the food that's nourishing our body comes from the earth, from Mother Earth, Pachamama.
Yeah.
And so just to have that moment.
Yes.
And give thanks, whether you're cooking, the grandma's secret recipe, a secret ingredient is always love.
Always.
So that love and gratitude that you can just have that moment, that blessing, depending on your culture, whatever it's called, is just giving thanks that the earth has made you an offering that is sustaining life. And if we can just start to have that practice and then become aware that, we're basically raping Mother Earth with our practices and consumption, and to start to have more mindfulness around that, starting with just being grateful for our food, that could change everything.
It does. And that's actually a very basic practice I teach all my clients and my community. It's just with, if you have a gratitude practice, it's just taking it one small step further, right? And if you don't, you can start anytime. But if you have one, let's say you start in the morning, and you're going through that gratitude list, right? Whether you say it in your head, you say it out loud, you write it down, however you do it. Just what I'd like you to do is just connect to one or two things. It doesn't have to be a list of 10, but choose one or two things and really connect with it until there's almost like a physiological response. It's a visceral response. So you're thinking about your baby, or the person that you love, and you think about it until you can feel them.
Like your heart opening, that warmth.
Yeah, you can feel the warmth of their body. You can smell their smell. I mean, do it until now you're really connecting your emotional, your heart body, your spiritual body, but also with your physical, with your physiological. You've made that connection. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take that energy, that feeling, and you're going to put it back into everything that you then put back into your body or into someone else's body. So then when you go make your tea or your coffee, or you're preparing for food, you just take that moment and connect to that feeling of that, like that love that you literally feel physically when you think about that person. Or it could be a thing. It could be, your grandma's favorite pie, your favorite pie from your grandma, whatever it is. But you have a visceral response. You have a physiological response to it. And then you literally put that energy back into that beverage or that food that you're preparing. That then goes back into your body. It goes back into the body of whoever you're serving. And when you take that moment to do that, you're also shifting yourself into this place of receiving. You're shifting into this parasympathetic mode if you weren't already kind of in that state. And now your digestive system will process what you put in a completely different way. And you'll actually absorb those nutrients in a different way. And as you said, that's what grandma's doing. That's that secret ingredient. That's why, she can give you that recipe and she can swear to you there's nothing left off of it. And you can make it, and it's not going to taste quite the same because that ingredient is her energy for you, that love for you.
Yeah. And for those of you listening who are like, maybe an eye roll, gratitude and blessing your food, that doesn't do anything to change the food. But there have been try it. And also there's been so much scientific research actually about intention. And one of my favorites is Dr. Masaru Emoto.
Dr. Emoto, one of my favorites too, yeah.
And his water intention experiments, and how the human body is made up of 70%-ish water, depending on how hydrated you are.
Yes, good note.
And the Mother Earth is made up of about 70% water, and are the food, the plants, the vegetables, the fruits, they're made up of water as well. So in his experiments, he has water, and then there's an intention poured in. There's an energy. So in one room, he's got water bottles, and they're playing like death metal, which is like, it has a certain frequency, right? And it goes into the water, and then he freezes the water and looks under, the microscope at the water crystals, and they're very they're incoherent, they're fragmented, they're jagged, and it's a moment in time reflection of the energy frequency. Then he'll infuse the water with love, or play classical music, or Beethoven, or even the Beatles, because there's so much love in that music and the energy and the intention. Or he'll put the word gratitude on the bottle, freeze, put them under the microscope, and they're these beautiful, symmetrical, coherent crystals.
Beautiful.
So, I mean, that is scientific research that is demonstrating that if we're organisms made up of water, and intention affects the molecular structure of that water, then something like gratitude, where you're changing your frequency, you have that intention, that feeling, and you're sending it towards
literally infusing it.
That it just makes sense to me.
And that's just one. There's other studies as well, but that one is one of the most popular, and so easy for someone to just like type in Dr. Emoto and look that up. But it's powerful. And what I just want to remind everyone is it doesn't cost you any time. It doesn't cost you anything to do. In fact, it actually will, in bringing that frequency, putting the frequency out there, bringing it back into your body, putting it into everything, only brings you more. And so it's just a little reminder to do that. And we so often forget, right?
Totally. We're moving a million miles an hour. You are one of the most ambitious, overachieving women I know, and you're just doing so much great things. And I'm trying to raise a child and do a podcast and so we're doing, so like, it's great to practice, because you're going to forget. Sometimes you're going to be on the road, but it's such a great practice. And the other thing that just came up for me, and I know that you and I have battled with perfectionism and overachieving and trying to take responsibility that maybe is not ours on our shoulders. And so for people to take that same Masaru Emoto research and the blessing of the food, and to go back to our own organisms. And, we have this critical voice in our head that's constantly beating ourselves up, or someone that's overweight, or someone that feels they're too tall or too short or too black or too white, looking in the mirror and hating themselves or speaking to themselves. I mean, that's intention you're putting into your cells, into your body, into your tissue. You're feeling that. Your body is feeling that. And so just to be mindful and to try to practice a little more love. You won't get to where you want to go through beating yourself up. You can only get there through starting to love where you're at and starting to practice, whether it's Louise Hay and mirror affirmations, or there's a million, different therapeutic modalities that you could do, or psychological practices that you can incorporate, but
really simple
it's
ones.
It's just good to be aware of when you're beating yourself up, your cells are listening.
And even if you're not saying it out loud, even just the thought of it, all our thoughts hold a frequency, right? That's what we're talking about right now. And just reminding yourself, it's so there's something that I do for myself, and something that I also share with my community, and I try to have, not everyone does it. Sometimes I fall off too. But we have our gratitude journals, right? We have our gratitude journals, we have our manifestation journals. I have a separate journal. It's the I'm grateful for me journal, and what you write in it is it's an I am, or I'm grateful that I am. And you start to make a list, and it may sound awkward at first. You're sitting there, and does it feel egotistical? Does it feel arrogant to say, okay, I am smart, or I am whatever it is? What you can do to get started is to think about someone who loves you. What are the things that they would say about you? They would say, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're funny, you're athletic, you are just a light. Whatever it is, like, don't judge it, because you are judging it if you're not writing it down, if you're not receiving it. That's what someone's saying of you. Use that as your starting point, and then now add to it and feel into it. And when you are able to write down, I am smart, I am beautiful, I'm perfect the way I am all the things. It's not just powerful, but it actually creates a frequency in your body, and that's your handwriting. And if you can even read it out loud, let's say you have a hard time saying affirmations, reading it makes it a little bit easier to do as a starting point. But also on those hard days, on those days where you're beating yourself up, on those days where you're your worst critic, and even though you shouldn't be saying these things, you still are, because, I don't know, something went wrong, at work that day or whatever it is. You look in that book and you start to read those pages, and it can shift your mind, it can shift your energy. And something that I just added to that recently was just tapping yourself, like as you're reading it, just tapping your thigh. It's like tapping yourself. And, if you do emotional freedom tapping, there's different places you can tap, right? But if you're not going to go through the whole, the
training
whole,
so what's the thymus? It's
or just
right
like tap right here, or like tap near your heart. You can tap anywhere. Like tap your heart. It's you can't miss, right? Just like tap it while you're saying it, and it really makes a difference. And again, it's that emotional and that physical connection.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to the Heal Podcast. Be sure to tune in for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. Oh, and make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. And if you feel inspired, we would love you to rate and review us so that we have the opportunity to reach more people. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram for some behind-the-scenes fun and more inspiration at @HealDocumentary and @Kelly Gores. Thank you so much, and be well.